everyone. And yes, I am grateful that you took the time to listen to my talk. Thank you. And as we say in German, herzlich willkommen. All right, who am I? My name is Richard Sitole. I'm a software engineer, a tech writer, conference speaker, and a former co-host of a podcast called Adventures in Angular. I see that all the Angular fanboys are there, so hopefully you'll find this useful. And I'm also a father to two most adorable human beings you'll ever see. So that is me. I work for a company called Optimal Systems. We are based in Berlin, Germany. I work with a highly talented team, and together we look after one of our enterprise content management software called Enayo. It's a cross-platform document management system application with a very rich feature set, which allows our customers to basically digitize their entire corporate knowledge. I'm extremely grateful to be a member of such an awesome team, a very collaborative team. And if you're interested in what we do in more detail, please feel free to reach out after the talk. And of course, I need to give you my contact details. So there they are. Like I said, just reach out to me afterwards via any of these channels. I'll share the screen again at the end of the talk if you didn't get a chance to note all of them down. And let's connect and collaborate, hopefully. Okay, today I'd like to share a story, my journey, that I hope leaves you with new insights, especially if you're early into your software development journey. I will provide not just knowledge, but also inspiration and encouragement. And like any story, it will have a beginning, middle, and an end. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Oh, just a note, throughout the presentation, I will share quotes from insightful individuals. I hope you'll find them as inspiring as I have. So, how did my journey start? Like that. Little Richard had no idea what the next plus minus 40 years had in store for him. Actually, funny thing is, nobody from my family knows exactly when this photo was taken. I'm waiting for AI developers to come up with an app to, help timestamp this photo. That would be great. If you find out, or if it already exists, please let me know. I would appreciate that. All right. So yeah, how did my story start? For that, we have to go back to early high school, because that's when I was formally introduced to computers. To give you a bit of context, I come from a rural town in the Limpopo province. That's the north part of the country. And during those years, those early years, access to technology was very limited. Just to give you an idea, there was just only one science center catering for several dozen schools. And if you wanted to use a computer, well, you had to visit the science center. So schools used to rotate, and sorry, I have a problem with scrolling on my slide. Where's my cursor? Sorry, guys. Oh, okay, here we go. Sorry. All right. Yeah, just to give you an idea, there was, as I mentioned, there was only this one science center catering for all the schools surrounding my town. And schools would rotate, so that would give me an opportunity to play around with computers. In those days, we were exposed to desktop computers, played computer games like Doom. which was loaded from a highly capable 5.25-inch floppy disk, if you remember those. Right. Yeah. Additionally, at the Science Center, we could also explore with interactive exhibits, conduct simple science experiments, and try out technological gadgets of the time. And yeah, this early exposure to technology really ignited my curiosity. I remember in high school, I think it was in the 11th grade, they just introduced computer science as a subject. And being the super curious person that I am, naturally, I opted for it. But in those days, we're not really learning computer programming. It was, basic concepts like what is RAM, what is ROM, CPU, bits and bytes, that sort of thing. But at the same time, if you think about it, those are the very same building blocks that make all this magic happen, right? Yes, and in fact, I remember the language of choice at the time was Delphi. Any Delphi lovers out there? Yeah, so that was a little bit of exposure that I had. But as they say, sorry? Oh, okay. No, I'm still on the same slide. Yeah, yeah. Yes, thanks for saying that. All right, yeah. So as that was a little exposure that I got, and but as they say, a seed was planted right there and then. Yes, this was is my high school. I think the computer science classroom was the one on the left. And again, I'm patiently waiting for AI to timestamp this photo. So I'm waiting. All right, so high school is done. Fast forward to university, first year. I enrolled in a degree for a degree in information systems. But then again, I was not really exposed to programming. It was more, it was like a mix of commercial and software engineering theory kind of subjects. So things like databases, software project management, financial mathematics, statistics, and that sort of thing. But my curiosity was still there. I was like, okay, this is fun, but I really want to get my hands dirty. I wanted to do computer programming. Yeah, and furthermore, I think around a year and a half before finishing my degree, we had a loss in my family. My dad passed away. And since he was my financial sponsor, I was not able to continue and finish my degree. As a result, I had to drop out. So that's what I did. But I was very grateful for the life lessons and education that I received during the university time. I learned a lot, fostered lifelong friendships, which still exist today. This is Wits University. Do we have any Wetzies, former Wetzies here? Yeah, West or East Campus? Ah, good lad. Me too. All right. Yeah, moving along. So, after dropping out, I started looking for work. I got a job at a telecommunications company as a tech support guy, offering tech support over the phone. So basically, call center agent. Yeah, if you remember back in those days, we're working with devices like the BlackBerry, Motorola Razr, Alcatel, Symbian-based Nokia, and the first iPhone. Things like 3G and 4G were non-existent. And I guess youngsters these days cannot imagine the sort of speeds that were prevalent at the time. I'm talking GPRS. But those were the times. So I continued doing this work, trying to save up money and so forth. But something happened to me during that period. I learned a lot about myself, about life skills, self-discipline, and so forth. But when the penny finally dropped, I think it was probably around 6 years into this tech support guy job. And because initially, when I dropped out of the university, the plan was to, immediately enroll, like distance learning, to further my studies while working, of course. However, that gave me time to reflect, and that self-reflection led to a decision. I was like, wait a minute, I need to go back and finish what I started. That feeling to go back to school was so insatiable. I had the edge to go back, and that's exactly what I did. And that is the company I work for. Any former MTNers here? No? Okay. All right. Now we come to the interesting part of the journey. So I enrolled with a distant learning university to continue studying while working, of course. There was no other option. It was the only way to pay for the school fees, the uni fees. And so I did that. It was very, very hard. It was painful at the beginning, actually, but I kept pushing myself and I persevered. And then something suddenly happened. I was like, whoa, I'm actually enjoying this learning process, I started getting that sense of accomplishment, and it was also showing through my grades. And then about a year and a half later, I obtained my degree in software, in informatics, which I was obviously super proud of. But at that moment, I realized, I really, really enjoy this learning process, and I asked myself, what more is out there? And being a sucker for punishment, I decided to continue and pursue my second degree while working, of course. And the first thing I realized, well, I thought, I thought it was going to be a little bit easier, but it was quite the opposite. I found it was, it was harder. Um, so then I would ask myself, so what's going on? It was more difficult. It was harder. Of course, the higher you go, the more difficult it becomes. But I had learned how to learn. I had honed in the skill of learning. I had a formula how to deal with challenges. So I applied what I learned in the previous degree, and luckily that worked out. And I obtained my second degree, passed cum laude. So that was fantastic. It was quite a relief. I was very, very happy. But here's a kicker. During all this time, from the beginning when I registered or when I started with the first degree, I had 2 kids during that period. So wow, go figure, right? But if you were to ask me, what do I attribute that to? It's very easy for me to stand here and say, I did it on my own. I'm great. No, it has to do with the supportive structure that I had at the time, family, friends, and also collaborating with fellow students. I remember I would take extra classes in the evening for those courses that I was not very familiar with. I needed a little bit of extra push, so to speak. So I took extra classes at night, and that basically yielded good results at the end. And I think, it goes to show too that if you really want something and you're willing to put in the work and make sacrifices, a lot of times people talk about sacrifices as the things that you have to give up. But really what sacrifice is what you're trading off to get what you want. I've always had this motto, I don't know whether it developed over time or if it's always been there, but it's quite simple, and I'm sure you've heard it before, and that is start with the end in mind. It's simple enough, but for me, I take that motto to an extreme sometimes. For example, I would open an article and I will go to right at the end of the article and read it backwards. I don't know, my mind works in a crazy way sometimes, but The moral of this part of the story is that start with the end in mind. Before I went into this journey, I tried to imagine and ask myself, how do you know if you've achieved something? How do you assess yourself? How do you know that you have arrived in inverted commas? And I believe, like, if you ask yourself that question often enough, you will start to get this picture. You will start developing this picture that of what it looks like, where the end goal is. And well, if there is such an end goal, and we know in software development that doesn't exist, right? But at least it will give you an idea of what's out there, where you're heading to. And for me, what it meant was like getting involved in the dev community. Free Code Camp, if you've heard about that, was extremely instrumental in my journey. For those that do not know, Free Code Camp is an online platform that allows you to learn to code for free. Self-paced, but very opinionated in terms of what to do first. And I remember back in those days, Quincy Larson, the founder of Free Code Camp, great guy. I did an interview with him a couple of years ago in Dublin. We had this thing called Free Code Camp meetup groups. And I was one of the co-organizers of these groups based here in Johannesburg. And I remember at the beginning of these meetups, at times, would just be it would just be me and another person. I would wake up very early in the morning, brush my teeth, jump in the shower, have breakfast, grab my whiteboard and markers because, I was like, yeah, we're going to learn something new today. And I would head off to a coffee shop. We used to have these meetups at a coffee shop. And I would wait and wait and wait. And, one person would show up. Sometimes more people would show up. But that in itself just validated something for me, inside me. To drive myself to believe in a cause this much, it must mean something. It excites me, it makes me feel good, and that drives you to keep going. I believe like most of the time, there are pockets of information that are missing, which can either enhance your skills as a developer or provide, a deeper understanding about a specific topic. And I believe that's what it's all about. Continuous learning. It's about constantly filling in those gaps of knowledge. And that leads you to master your chosen area of focus. The life of a father and a nighttime coder. Let's just say there was never a dull moment. And yeah, this is us at a coffee shop at one of our free code camp meetups. Yeah, fun times. It was really, really inspiring. So I finished my studies. I get my first real job. And I say real job in inverted commas because it was the first job that I got professionally. And I think it was titled something, I don't know, like business process analyst or something like that. Basically working with business stakeholders, doing process re-engineering and that sort of thing. It was during this time that I met my first mentor. The guy was great. Premlin was his name. He basically helped me gain self-confidence, to be career-focused, and most importantly, to value quality work. He also guided me to become an experienced business analyst, skills of which are still invaluable today. Especially when eliciting requirements for software features, interacting with different lines of business, coaching, mentoring, and that sort of thing. And, looking back, I realized how valuable it was to have a mentor, even though I didn't fully apprehend it at the time. But it's something that I strongly advocate for today. Seek out mentors and learn from them. If there's someone you admire, try to emulate them or find ways to improve yourself to move closer to your goals. So that was the mindset that I had at the time. Again, this is the building that I moved to. So basically moved from 14th Avenue as a call center agent to join MTN Business as a business professional. But to bring it back to software development, it was during this time when I was still a business analyst. I worked on a web project where I did requirements gathering, which is typical for BAs. But I worked very closely with developers. I was very fascinated because but I worked very closely with developers, and I was still very, very fascinated because if you think back to what I said at the beginning, that little bit of exposure to programming in high school, it was still percolating in the back of my mind. I asked myself, how can I get back into that? Because that made me feel something. I wanted to feel that again. So as soon as I found the opportunity to work close with the people that were doing the thing that I wanted to do, I just literally sucked it all up. I was very fascinated with code. I remember I asked one of the developers in one of the projects we worked on, I was like, how do you guys do this? How does it work? And I remember the first time I saw HTML code, it looked completely alien to me. It was very hard to imagine that humans can understand this, and that just made my curiosity grow stronger and stronger. I was like, okay, I definitely need to find out how this works. I mean, people wrote this, right? So there must be some way, some formula to understand what's going on. So that was basically the first need for change that pushed me towards that direction. The next natural thing to do at the time was basically to Google around, find out where I can find learning resources, because at the time, going back to school full time, that was out of the question, 2 kids and all. The demands were, and then the stakes were a little bit higher this time around. But I did find free online courses. I don't know if you've heard of CS50 from Harvard University. So I did a little bit of that. I think it was Java, but at a very, very basic level. But this stuff was still a little bit above my head. I couldn't wrap my head around it. So I decided to put it down and I went back to the beginning. I started listening to podcasts, tech podcasts to be specific. I was listening to tech podcasts every free time that I had, whether I was running, at the gym, whatever. I was just listening and sucking it all in. And if I remember correctly, I think this was the first time I heard about Free Code Camp. It was still in its infancy at the time. This was probably about 9-10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But it's amazing how things come together. And I believe they come together for a reason. And I think for me, just pushing myself, immersing myself in the dev community, listening to podcasts, doing meetups, and so on, that was the first time that the light bulb came on. I thought, okay, so there is a way to get into this thing other than going the formal route. So basically, that gave me like an overview, a lay of the land, if you will. And it also helped me figure out what to learn first, because that is very important. So from that point on, I fully immersed myself into the whole coding lifestyle. I did stuff through Udacity, Udemy, YouTube videos, and a whole lot of other stuff. And I think at some point I was awarded what they call a Google Africa Scholarship. Basically, it's just they pay for you to do online courses to learn how to code. They call them micro degrees, if I remember correctly. That was quite interesting, actually. That's a different topic, a story for another talk. I'm watching the time now. But keep in mind, I'm doing all of this while working full time, help raise kids at home. I was what they call a nighttime coder because nighttime was really the only time that I had to do this. And then eventually I said, okay, maybe there is a way that I can put all of this knowledge that I'm learning into one place, so I can demonstrate this to future potential employers. And that's what I did. I built a portfolio, a website, packed it with all the projects that I've built up to that point, through mainly doing free code camp challenges, as we used to call them back then. And that was my very first major exposure to software development. But I was still not a full-time developer. I was still a business analyst. So the transition from business side to the dev side, that happened when I got, or during the time when I just got a new job as a product manager, looking after data centers. But I was extremely unhappy. As I mentioned, in the back of my mind, I was still thinking about those alien characters on the back of a web page. I really wanted to do that. I want to get back to that. Needless to say, that product manager job didn't last that long. Eventually, I decided to resign and started looking for a dev job. And I remember this one time I was, going for a walk, listening to a tech podcast as usual. It was during the time when I was still deciding whether or not to leave the product manager job. And I was walking around the office park, and I saw this one sign on the building. It said Bright House. And I was very curious. I was like, okay, what do they do? And it wasn't the first time that I've actually seen this, but for some reason on this specific day, that really stuck with me. And I remember when I got back to my desk, I was super curious. I was like, okay, let's find out what do they do. And I started Googling around. And I remember at the time, I realized that they are a sister company to the company that I was working for. One thing led to another. I was starting to be more curious. And then I discovered that actually they are a dev shop. They basically outsource developers. So what did I do? I sent an email to the HR lady of the company I just discovered, and I said just what I've just described to you. I said, I really want to get into software dev. I don't have experience at all, but I've built these things at night for the last 2 years or so. Can I talk to someone? Can you help? And she goes, sure, please come over. And I remember I was supposed to meet with the hiring manager, but for some reason on this day, I had there was just the senior developer. So basically, the interview was just between me and him. And the funniest thing happened during this interview. A typical interview format. You're sitting on the one side, and the interviewer is on the other side. But I think what he picked up from my side during the interview process was that I can only assume this, I think he picked up a sense of passion, like deep passion for what I was doing. And I was very, very passionate about it. I still am. And so he basically just threw away all his questions that he had for me. We started discussing, I don't remember which technology that was hot at the time. And we just went off on a different tangent. We just went on and started talking about technologies and that sort of thing. And needless to say, I got the job. And so that's basically how I transitioned into the dark side. And this was the office park where I spent a significant number of years. And I remember at lunch, I would walk around the campus, the outside perimeters, this one here. And I would listen to podcasts at times 1.4 speed, which I still do. So I could easily complete a handful of JavaScript Jabber adventures in Angular, developer tea podcast, episodes each round. So that was fun. After getting the dev job, I was introduced to this company where I was placed at this company, and they immediately threw me into the deep end. Well, I eventually found myself deeply involved in work. I put in a lot of effort, continued to code at night and learn, especially since I was playing catch up, right? I was working with people that were more experienced, with many years of experience in the industry. Despite the challenges, I embraced the journey with curiosity and enthusiasm every step of the way. And I think after spending about 3 years in that job, I found myself taking on more responsibilities like mentoring junior developers, collaborating with stakeholders involved in hiring processes, managing production deployments, and so forth. And my former boss is here to attest to that. So, yeah, it was a rewarding experience, and that showed the value of hard work and dedication. And towards the end, I felt ready for the next challenge. And when an opportunity arose, I knew that my Berlin journey was about to begin. And this was our fancy office on Grayston Drive. We had a bunch of teams throughout the building, but I think the dev team was located, correct me if I'm wrong, Victor, it's at the second floor from the top. The web team, we had Android, iOS, UI, UX, BAs, and they were all brilliant. They were open and helped me a lot. And I will forever be grateful for the lessons learned and the send away party and gift that you guys gave me. So thank you guys. And yeah, so this, what you're looking at, is my current place I called the office. All dev teams, this is the Dodo office. Dodo is in the bird. All our dev teams have names, bird names basically. But I think ours is the coolest. I extremely love my job. I enjoy the work that we do. Our software helps many people in many industries. And it is satisfying to be part of a team of very smart individuals who value work-life balance. They care for their employees. And most importantly, I think having fun while delivering value to our stakeholders. So I'm very humbled and grateful for that. I hope with that, you will start to imagine what your end goal looks like, and then work your way backwards to the beginning. Through continuous learning, perseverance, determination, and resilience, you will achieve your goals. There's one thing that I'm also very passionate about, which I want to share with you today, guys. It's giving back to the community by donating your free time. I contribute by helping a nonprofit organization maintain an online presence. Something small, I do it on my off time, but I'm very passionate about that. But it also helps me as a developer to hone in my technical skills while developing their online presence. And I take that knowledge back and use it in my company and share lessons learned with my colleagues. So it's a win-win situation. In closing, I want to say we are developers. We do techie things. We write software that helps move the world forward. But if you look around, we're all just human beings with different backgrounds, cultures, coming from different countries. But this is what it's all about, the humanity, the humility, and the people. John Kamara, our keynote speaker today, he put it aptly. He said, "Leave nobody behind." Thank you.